This edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose is sponsored by Splunk and Carasoft. On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, inside the technology operation in the Office of the Secretary of Defense, the cyber defense that government can't build alone, and special operations in the air and in space. Welcome to FedGov Today with Francis Rose. The Office of the Secretary of Defense is 7 months into its effort to digitize itself through its Information Management and Technology Directorate. The Deputy Secretary of Defense, Kathleen Hicks, laid out her vision for the Directorate in a document called Modernizing the Digital Experience in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. Danielle Metz is Director of Information Management and Technology and Director of Administration and Management in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. Danielle, welcome. Thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you, Francis.
What was the operational direction that you were pushed to go in when you transitioned from CIO in DoD to the office that you occupy now?
So I think before I answer that question, it's really good to provide a little context into how OSD got to where it is. And so, as we mentioned before, in April of last year, we did a huge study to assess the landscape of the IT posture for OSD. And we came up with a number of findings and recommendations. And the findings were what you would think. After 15, 20 years of IT consolidation and treating technology less than, OSD was unable to execute any of its missions. And so we had disjointed, we had angry users. They didn't know why they were angry, they just couldn't do their job. And so we recognized that we needed to have an entity, an organization that would be the leader for IT as well as an advocate for OSD and really unify OSD and treat it as a unified component on the same plane as a military department. And to have that, you need to have a CIO. And so we were able to leverage the work that I did as the Deputy CIO with what we wanted to do with digital modernization, cloud adoption, and apply those best practices and the failures that we had there into creating this OSD IT enterprise.
What do you think, skills that you gained as the Deputy CIO in the CIO's office apply most to what you're doing now?
I think the biggest takeaway was the fact that we had to center on the user, that the user is at the heart of our strategy, and we needed to be more creative with how we talked about and change the attitude and the mindset of technology. That it's not a back office function, that it's not, hey, I can't send this email. It is something much bigger than that, because technology is what is the critical enabler to anything that the Department of Defense does, regardless of what your mission is. And so treating technology on par with all the missions that we do is really important. How the CIO is viewed as a leader in the C-suite that's able to drive that digital transformation changes, and then focusing not only just on the delivery of technology, but really the people and the processes to be able to maximize the technology.
You said the users were angry and they didn't know why. It doesn't matter why, I suppose, right?
That's right.
If their stuff doesn't work, that's what's the problem.
That's right, and they don't need to know why it's not working. That's the responsibility of the technologist. That's what the Office of CIO brings to bear. And so how we go about describing that, we have this idea of in-chair. You're a user that is like, I am doing a Teams call, but my mic is not enabled on my laptop. I will chat you my questions. Well, that takes away the whole collaborative experience of what we're trying to achieve. Or it takes 2 months to have a laptop issued, or any type of end-user devices. So we wanted to be able to target that, to be able to focus on how do we address what the user needs and have that be an in-chair response. And then build upon that for your in-computer problems, where you have processes that are broken or kind of antiquated, that are really hindering your ability to maximize technology. Or we have lifecycle replacement that doesn't really exist because we don't know what our baseline asset management is. So going about some of the basic hygiene to go about that is incredibly important. And then the last piece, which is where we've typically always focused on, is in-system problems. So those gnarly problems that take multi-year, a lot of money, it's the right thing to do. The users don't really get to see any benefit. And the idea is, how do you describe all that and then tie the thread from your user all the way down to the fundamental issues, and then be able to drive those changes.
So I mentioned the document from Deputy Secretary Hicks. As I read that, it struck me as a vision document more so than an execution document. How are you turning that vision into operations?
Well, we delivered an implementation plan where we highlighted 3 goals that we wanted to be able to do, which was 1, flip the delivery model from it being a service provider-led to customer-led. And in order to do that, we needed to create forums where we bring the users in to be able to understand their viewpoints, what's working, what is not, understand what their requirements are, and then collectively from an OSD perspective, prioritize that. And then we're able to go after the advocacy for the dollars, build implementation plans, and drive those changes. I think the other one was treat OSD as an IT enterprise. And so that was creating this community, this identity, that instead of having 17 separate PSAs that had to figure things out for themselves, we now represent the OSD, and we are treating ourselves as a unified component. And lastly, maximizing the technology. It's not enough just to put the technology out and expect the users to figure it out. We really need to be able to have dynamic training, do creative champion programs where we're able to kind of train the trainer, and then be able to redo our policies that are holding us back. And the example that I use is the fact that a lot of our policies are fairly antiquated. So when we have Teams, which is supposed to be this perfect collaboration experience, if you don't have a camera, if you don't have a mic, then it's just really a telephone call. That is not what we want to have in 2023.
So how much of the issue that you mentioned earlier about the Chief Information Officer, the role that you happen to occupy now, being at the table, being a part of the decision-making process here, part of the C-suite, how much of that is a chicken and egg? How much of it is dependent on you and your team's performance, and how much of it is dependent on those other people, other stakeholders saying we want this person involved in the decision-making process?
Yeah, I think it is an interesting balancing act, because for so long, those PSAs had to fight for themselves. And some did really well, and others did not. What we're offering is a democratization of technology and the access to technology to do your job and to do it well. And so there is a part where we have to, a value proposition where we have to prove ourselves. And I think we've done that in the past 8 months. We've been able to create the governance forums where we have user feedback, accountability, transparency. We're able to advocate for dollars. We're doing a global service desk, which is a huge modernization effort of the service desk in the Pentagon reservation. We were successful in that because we knew what needed to happen. We listened to the users in the PSAs when we did listening sessions. We continue doing those listening sessions because of the importance of understanding what our customers' needs are. And they can see that we're fighting for them. And then they get excited by that because they're seeing that they are being heard, that they are being empowered, and they're doing a better job because of the technology that we're giving to them.
We have about a minute left, Danielle. A lot of what you've described so far is important, but there might not be specific markers. What markers are you setting to determine at some future point, year from now, 2 years from now, we're on track, we're doing this the way that we want to do it?
So for the Global Service Desk, we're going to start that implementation in FY24. That is going to be significant. The next thing that we are working on, we have user surveys that we started in February. This is the first time ever that OSD is being able to, on a monthly basis, understand and get to provide feedback for us. And we're taking all of that body of work, and creating a 5-year strategic plan. And then based on that, we can advocate for resources and then be able to track it in those governance forums to ensure that we're on the right track. And all the while, the user is the one that's guiding us through this. So if the user is not satisfied, it doesn't matter why they're not satisfied. We need to make sure that they're able to do their job.
How much is it important to get specific feedback, though, from those users, not just, I'm not happy, I don't like this?
It's extremely important, and I think the first step is getting the baseline, and then based on that information, we'll be able to tweak and have better questions to get better answers to be able to guide to where the strategy needs to go.
Danielle Metz, thanks very much for joining me. It's great to have you on the program.
Thank you, Francis.
You can read more about OSD's Information Management and Technology Directorate at fedgovtoday.com. Coming next, the cyber defense the government can't build alone. FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment.